If you're a master's track and field sprinter over the age of 40 or a youth track and field sprinter or the parent of a youth track and field sprinter, this video is going to help you or your child get faster. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I broke my plateau of 10.77 100 meters to 10.08 to this past year running a wind-aided 9-second and 100-meter dash in just 4 short years. And it's not by doing more workouts, but by following a repeatable system that removes randomness from speed training. But in addition, I will also show you how every single athlete who's been in my one-on-one training group for at least 6 months has set a new personal record either on the track or on one of our speed testing metrics, barring injury. And finally, in this video, I will share a comprehensive year-long training plan to make sure that you can crush your goals this year. Let's dive in. And before you only assume that this system only works for freak athletes, stay with me. And this is a 60-year-old sprinter who dropped her time from 9.0 to 8.6 in just 5 weeks.
I think my biggest fear until probably today, even the last 4 weeks working together, is the program really designed for somebody as old as I am? Does it recognize that maybe masters need a little bit more rest? Yeah, so I think our test 60 was probably, I think it was like a 9:02, and today my first 60 was an 8:66. My second one was an 8:70. Although, I mean, it definitely gives me confidence. I wasn't sure whether that confidence was ever going to come back.
And this 59-year-old sprinter went from 7:45 to just 7:25 in 8 weeks.
Start off with my 55, and this is all hand timed. So I had to do, several attempts, and I started off with a 7:45, my best. And now, most recently, I am running a 7:25. So that's 2/10. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
In about
Like 8 weeks. But what about Caden, who dropped his time from 11.2 to 10.79 without access to a track?
I would say, honestly, I was fairly average coming in. I had a little bit of natural talent, but no real refinement. I wasn't really training like a sprinter. I went from an 11.2, 11.3 guy to running 10.7 and 10.8 very consistently. It was great. It's great to see all that finally pan out, and it's great to see the results of what the work you can put into.
And one sprinter cut his time by almost 3 seconds in just 2 months.
I really just had no guidance. I was just lost, just doing random workouts I found on TikTok, having no direction, seeing little to no progress in the weight room and on the track. My 100 time is 11.7. My 200 is 24.3. And then I had a split of 54.8 for the 400. I feel rewarded. It showed me that if I can progress this fast, it just made me more hungry to be better.
And this is Harrison. He only had 6 weeks of training, got injured for 4 of those weeks. We've trained through the injury.
I haven't really had a lot of direction, a lot of guidance on how to get faster. I knew there was still a lot left on the table. I went from 11.84 and I got that down to 11.67. It felt great, and I came back stronger. That felt amazing. That felt great.
Awesome.
Unreliable, I feel like they could be hit or miss. For the triple broad jump, my last PR was, or the first time I tested, it was a 21.11, and then my most recent one, it was a 22.2.
Yep. Okay.
And then in the 60 meter, first time I tested it was a 7.7, and then the most recent test, it was a 7.5.
Yeah.
Definitely happy. Pretty excited to see where else, how much other seconds I can shave off.
Yeah.
Then also gain a little confidence back.
Before we hop into the video where I tell you the exact step-by-step blueprint on how the PTD method works, I'm just going to take a couple seconds, guys, to tell you a high-level overview of my story. Some of you may know me, some of you may not, but I've been sprinting for over 15 years. High school, I became a state champion in track and field, but my speed ultimately ended up plateauing for about 4 years. It was frustrating, to say the least, but I stayed determined to find a way to break through. In college, I ended up earning a Division I scholarship to play running back at the University of New Mexico, but also to compete as a dual sport athlete in football and track and field. So balancing 2 sports while working 2 jobs, it wasn't easy, but I wanted to challenge myself. But at the end of the day, my confidence ultimately took a huge hit during my freshman year. I realized that I needed to reassess and realign my goals at the end of the day. But after redshirting my freshman year, I began to slightly regain my confidence, only to ultimately face, unfortunately, a season ending injury that year. So that was one of the lowest points in my journey, but I refused to give up. I worked harder than ever and committed to making a comeback that not only allowed me just to be as fast as I was before, but ultimately faster, right? My hard work paid off. I returned stronger. I won the conference meet in track and field that year. And that moment ultimately just reignited my passion, my drive. That ultimately led me to transfer back home to Wisconsin to solely focus on track and field. And winning that conference meet at New Mexico was ultimately just the beginning, because at Wisconsin, I broke the school records in the 60, the 100, and 200, became a 6-time NCAA All-American, and earned a spot on Team USA for the 4x1 relay and won a gold medal. So my journey has taught me that setbacks can be the springboard to greatness. Now today, as a professional track and field athlete, I've dedicated myself to coaching and empowering athletes to reach their full potential. Through my coaching experience and growing an online community and the partnerships and my teammates and even my coach, we focus on providing real value, whether you're just starting or you're striving to ultimately go pro one day. So to all the athletes out there, we have our own path full of unique challenges and setbacks, but every obstacle is part of your story, and victory and growth ultimately comes from pushing forward no matter what. So remember this one thing: yesterday is gone and tomorrow isn't promised, but today is a gift, and it's ultimately up to you to maximize it, to overcome every challenge and protect your dreams. Keep pushing forward and absolutely never stop. And truly, the list goes on and on and on and on. But to save you some time in this video, we can't really go into detail on everyone. But now I'm going to show you how you can get exactly the same results. All right, so if you actually want to train for speed, you got to, at the bare minimum, cover these different phases of training. The very first phase of training that you need to incorporate is your general preparation phase. The whole focus here should be develop a broad base general fitness, strength, and work capacity. You need to build an aerobic capacity to support your recovery. You next want to be able to develop basic strength and coordination. You want to also improve your flexibility and mobility. Some of the training components that you want to make sure that you're focusing on in your general preparation phase would be just your general strength exercises. Next, you have your circuit training. You also want to include some tempo runs, some sub-maximal runs for conditioning and recovery. You also want to incorporate core and stability work and technique drills. The real nuggets in sprint training, the real gold, isn't just from going out to the track doing random workouts, right? It's about doing the right things at the right time. You have to do your general preparation. Do not skip over this. Then you want to begin doing some specific preparation phase training. So the focus is you want to transition from general fitness to sports specific fitness with greater emphasis on speed and sprint mechanics. So some of the goals: you want to improve sprint specific power and explosiveness. Then you want to refine your mechanics, such as your acceleration, top speed, or your actual rhythm of running. And then the next goal you want to try to accomplish is increase your sprint endurance demands for your race specific demands. Some of the training components would be just, doing some more drills, right? But focusing on these drills under fatigue, such as A skip, B skips, or even bounds. Then you move into some of your acceleration training. This can be done as sled sprints or short sprints. Then you want to move into some maximum strength lifts and explosive lifts. So that's what your strength training. And then you want to make sure you're incorporating your plyometrics, for power development. And you want to have continuous use of your tempo runs to help for recovery but also help build that aerobic base. After you move from your specific preparation phase, then you want to go ahead and get into your pre-competition phase. So, right, the focus here is peak power and speed development. You want to do this while reducing your overall training volume. The goals that you want to get accomplished, you want to be able to develop maximum speed. So, when you're out there doing your first week of training and going straight to these maximum velocity runs, make sure you're incorporating these other phases so that you aren't plateauing or getting hurt or not getting the true gains that you possibly can from sprint training, right? Then you want to fine tune competition mechanics and also have a race model. If you're going to the track and you don't know exactly what your race model is or what you should be trying to get accomplished during your race, you're ultimately setting yourself up for failure. And then the next goal is that you want to ensure proper recovery for maximum performance, right? Don't go to the track and try to sprint every single day, right? We want to ensure maximum recovery so that you can ultimately have maximize your performance. And then some of the training components of your pre-competition phase. Some things you probably want to do, flying sprints, some top end speed work, your short sprints with high intensity. Then you're going to go into your neuromuscular drills to help improve reaction time, but also your efficiency as a sprinter. And then you also want to reduce the frequency of heavy strength training to avoid unnecessary fatigue. And then you want to stimulate race condition with time trials, right? This is also a very important phase that we don't want to skip in training. And then we have our competition phase, right? The focus here is to achieve peak performance during competition by balancing intensity and recovery. And this is really what separates the good coaches from the bad, right? The good coaches can have you run your fastest when it matters the most, right? If you try to maintain your peak by just doing random things and all these other phases over here, you're ultimately going to get hurt and you're going to plateau at some point in the season. But the whole goal is at the competition phase to maintain speed and power without overtraining. You want to maximize your performance during your races. And some of the training components that's often used are your high intensity sprints, such as acceleration and race specific distances. You also want to have reduced training volume with strategic recovery days. You truly want to be minimal in avoiding heavy lifting, because these will ultimately have interference with sprinting. And then you want to have tactical preparation and mental rehearsal, right? These tactical preparations and mental rehearsal are vital to sprinting. And then the final phase is your transition phase. You want to focus on recovery and mental refreshment. At the end of your competitive season, right? The goals is to allow for your physical and mental recovery from the competitive phase. You want to address any imbalances or injuries, and you also want to maintain a basic level of fitness. So don't go out after the season going getting fat, sitting down, at least maintain a basic level of fitness. And some of the training components that you can do in this transition phase would be maybe just some light general fitness activities such as your swimming, your cycling, or light jogging, any of the cross training of that sort. You have your mobility and flexibility work, and then you want to gradually reintroduce your strength training and other basic drills. So, guys, these are just the phases of training. And if you aren't going through these phases of training appropriately at the right time of the year and have it diagnosed exactly to the components that you need for whatever you need to work on, then you're ultimately just, I don't know an analogy for it, but you're just shooting in the dark. You don't have a true target. You don't have any true training components, and you're going to do yourself a disjustice in the long run. So let's go move into some of the key training principles that you need to have in order to maximize your sprint training in 2025. So the goals, right? You want to have a high-low training system. You want to alternate between high intensity sprinting and lifting days and low intensity tempo runs, such as your recovery activities. These days help you maximize recovery and avoid burnout. You want to have a progression plan. You want to gradually increase in intensity and complexity throughout each of the training phases that we just discussed. And then you want to have an emphasis on recovery because recovery is such a critical component of performance overall. If you aren't recovering, you're not going to perform. And then individualization, right? You want to adjust training based on the athlete's needs and strengths and weaknesses. So if you're following a generic training plan and it's not individualized to your exact needs, you're ultimately not going to have your strengths addressed or your weaknesses addressed. So these are the key principles, but let's go a little bit more detail so you can understand these and you guys can go ahead and implement these blueprints today. So high, low intensity of a weekly sprinting structure. Now, this is different depending on what phase of training you're in. But for example, Monday would be your high intensity day. That would be something such as a focus on maximum sprints and your weight room. Focus on, power and overall strength. Tuesday would be your low intensity day, such as a tempo run, mobility circuit, or recovery work. Wednesday will be another high intensity day. That'll be focused on sprint mechanics and heavy lifting again. Thursday, another low intensity day, some tempo runs or light circuit training. And then Friday, a high intensity day, flying sprints, and also pair that with explosive lifting. And then Saturday would be your low intensity day again, recovery activities such as general fitness as well. And then Sunday is a complete rest day or light activity. So this is the weekly structure of how you'd want to do high and low intensity training. For your high intensity days, you want to focus on maximum effort activities that will stimulate your CNS, your central nervous system. That's going to help you promote explosive power development. So, just a couple examples for you guys. Sprinting at 90 to 100% intensity, such as fly sprints, block starts, acceleration work. And the distances can generally range from 20 to 400 meters depending on the focus, right? It all depends on the focus. And then in the weight room, heavy strength exercises such as your squats, your deadlifts, or power cleans. You also want to focus on some explosive lifts and plyometrics, such as your depth jumps or box jumps. And other activities that are high intensity would be such things as medicine ball throws, maximum effort bounding or hurdle hops, right? And then training guidelines. Your sprint distances should focus on quality, not quantity. Make sure you rest long enough for full recovery. For example, if you take 2 to 5 minutes for sprints under 60 meters. Then we have strength training. You want to emphasize compound lifts with heavy weights, 3 to 6 reps, 3 to 5 sets. Do not be in a weight room focusing on hypertrophy training. And then the frequency, right? High intensity days are typically 2 to 3 days a week. For example, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And these are the key training principles in low intensity days. These days need to focus on recovery and aerobic based development without taxing the CNS. You do not want to tax the central nervous system on your low intensity training days. An example of this would be a tempo run, 8 to 12 100s, 60 to 75% effort, 45% rest, 45 seconds rest. You can even take longer rest than that, right? And then general fitness would be mobility work, some dynamic stretching, yoga, foam rolling. And then, it also can incorporate some core stability such as planks or bird dogs and other great low intensity activities such as swimming or cycling. Circuit training with light weights or body weight exercises also work perfectly fine. And then the training guidelines. You want to focus on rhythm, guys. You want to focus on relaxation and volume rather than intensity. So that's another key differential. When we're in high intense days, it's opposite. You want to focus on quality rather than quantity. But on the opposite of low intensity days, you can also focus on volume rather than intensity. High intensity days, quality over quantity. Low intense days, you can increase the volume rather than increasing the intensity. Your heart rate should try to remain below 140 to 150 beats per minute to ensure it's truly low intensity. And then for frequency, 2 to 3 times a week. Another example of this would be Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. But with all of those things in mind, if you have the perfect training plan, if you don't incorporate the pillars of speed, you're ultimately going to be at a disadvantage. The pillar speeds is something that I've accumulated with my great mentors and my over 15 years of sprinting knowledge. That if you're plateauing, you're ultimately missing one of these pillars of sprinting success. So let's dive deeper into these pillars. So, step 0 will be to put God first. I'm a firm believer that if you put God first and you put Him truly at the beginning, not the end or in the middle of all of your plans, if you put Him at the beginning of your plans, He will direct your path if that's what He wants you to do. So, the very first step is you must put God first. Step 2 of implementing these pillars, you need to work with the sprint speed specialist. For example, if you drove a Ferrari, you might could get it, taken care of at a Honda dealership. They might be able to fix your Ferrari if something went wrong. And there's a chance they probably could diagnose it. Or you could go to the Ferrari dealership, right, that specializes in everything about a Ferrari. So all strength coaches aren't sprint coaches, and all sprint coaches aren't strength coaches. And that's why we developed a team so everybody can be their own specialist. But the very first step you need to do is to find you a sprint speed specialist. And then step 2 of the pillar, ignore step 3, right? But step 2 of the pillar is that you need to develop an elite mindset, right? An elite mindset allows you to be calm in the eye of a hurricane, hence the video, hence this picture. As you can see in a hurricane, it's all kind of chaos going around it, right? You got the wind, you got the different warm temperatures, right? The low pressure, the high pressure, and the huge storm that's going on. But in the eye, it's calm. And that's what you need to have in the mindset of being elite. You need to be calm in the eye of a hurricane with no matter what's going on around you, right? Last 5 meters of your race, are you going to stay calm and execute, or are you going to start to panic? If you feel someone get out on you on the block, are you going to get tight in the race? Or are you going to stay calm and execute what you were planned to do? You must have elite mindset to stay calm in the midst of a hurricane. And then step 4, you need to have a recovery plan geared towards high performance, right? So this is red light therapy. This is a cryo chamber, right? And everything doesn't have to be this level of high tech, but if you don't have a bare minimum recovery plan geared towards high performance, you are ultimately leaving speed on the table, right? So we got to make sure that we're covering all of these pillars of performance. And then number 5, your nutrition, right? You ultimately fuel yourself, right? What your fuel is what you're ultimately going to get out. You put bad fuel in, you're going to get bad fuel out. So what you need is a nutrition plan tailored directly towards you and your specific sprint goals, right? And not just tailored to you at the certain random time of the year. The goal is that you want to peak your body the same time you want to peak your speed. You want to be at 6% body fat the time it matters the most. So you want to periodize your nutrition the same way you'd want to periodize all the different training phases that we talked about earlier in this video. And that also brings up a good point. Every single one of these pillars need to be periodized so that they can be used at the right time. You don't want to just ice bath all year, right? You want to have a specific plan on how you're going to recover so that when you need your body to fully be recovered the most, that you have a proper periodized plan for that. Same thing goes with the mindset. You need to periodize your mindset training. And then step 6, one of the most important important steps that you can take. You need to have a way to truly get in-depth analytics on your movement as an athlete. So as an athlete, if your coach at the bare minimum isn't filming your reps, isn't giving you visual feedback of what you're doing wrong, then you're ultimately going to struggle because you can't even see nor feel the corrections that you need to make. Now, the athletes in our group, we give them in-depth analytics like these where we can get, their explosivity score or their technique score or their elasticity score, where we measure their top speed in meters per second, their 10-meter split. We get their step velocity, their distance of center of mass at touchdown, right? We get their shin angles over time. We get their foot placement relative to their center of mass, right? So these are in-depth analytics that's analyzing your movement. If you aren't getting at least the bare minimum, like I said, just your coach filming you so that you can see what you're doing wrong and you try to implement new movement strategies, you're ultimately going to be leaving speed on the table and you aren't actually getting coached. You're just being told what to do. So now you know, right? Just an elite sprint training plan will take you far. But to get actually over the hump to sprinting success, you need to put God first. You need to find your sprint speed specialist. Then you need to work on your mindset, your movement, your recovery, and your nutrition. And that will allow you to have your sprinting success. So these are all very important pillars of speed, right? You need to incorporate these pillars of speed on top of a customized sprint training plan so that you will never plateau as an athlete. So by now, you're probably realizing that speed training alone is hard. But when you try to add in the rest of the pillars, it gets even more difficult. But what if I told you that my team and I could completely solve the biggest issue, guidance, and that my team will work with you on a one-on-one basis, giving you the exact blueprint customized to your exact needs? I mean, even the greatest athletes in the world or the history of all sports had a great coach working with them on a one-to-one basis. So I'm excited to announce to you guys that in 2025, we're going to open up spots for people to join our Protect the Dream group for one-on-one speed training. But this offer is only for those athletes that are in our free sprint community called Sprint University. Now, it's pretty clear. There's only one way to actually get faster. And trust me, all of us elite sprinters know this, that it's not a random 6-week training program or a 12-week training program. In our Protect the Dream group, this is exactly what you're going to get. One-on-one guidance from a professional coach who tailors strategies to your unique strengths and areas for improvement, ensuring that you reach your full potential. Through that personalized coaching, you're going to get tailored sprint plans. You're going to get customized training plans designed specifically for your goals, whether it's just improving your sprint times or enhancing your acceleration or even just mastering your block starts. You'll also get access to our exclusive athlete community. You'll join a supportive community of driven athletes where you can share your experiences, gain motivation, and access to exclusive content and resources and peer support. You're going to get focused goal achievement. You're going to benefit from a structured, goal orientated coaching that helps you achieve measurable progress in your speed and overall athletic performance. You will also receive expert feedback. You're going to receive continuous expert feedback that's going to allow you to analyze your form, your technique, and performance. That's ultimately going to allow you to get real-time adjustments so that you can see faster results. You're also going to get comprehensive support. You're going to be able to enjoy a holistic approach that not only improves your speed, but also addresses your nutrition, your recovery, your mental preparation, giving you the true complete edge over your competition. And on top of that, you're going to get daily accountability and communication from the coaches. And on top of that, you're going to get daily communication and accountability. So here's the decision. If this video helped you at all, you now have two options. Option one, you can leave right now and try to implement all of these pillars of speed and training phases on your own with guessing, experimenting, and hoping that you're doing the right things for the next few years. Or you can apply to work with me and my team on a one-on-one basis for the Protect the Dream Speed Improvement System. Now, there is a $50 booking fee that gets directly applied to your program if we're a good fit. And the reason for the booking fee is simple. I'm currently an active professional sprinter competing on the circuit, and I lead a team of all dedicated sprint specialist coaches to make sure you, the athlete, get faster. And I limit the number of athletes that we onboard to just 5 per week so that I can stay locked in on my career and that my coaches and I can help deliver real results. So if you're serious about getting faster with a clear system instead of guessing, fill out the application and book your call now.